Welcome back to Ministry Monday. This is Carlton, Coon, and I'm actually doing this on a Thursday and intended for this to be done as I usually do it, where that it is posted after having some work done to it. But due to the uniqueness of the circumstance, this is going to be a little bit longer than what I usually do. So I'm just posting it live. It'll end up moving from there to YouTube by virtue of the help of virtual assistants. So I do realize it's not Monday. What I want to talk with you about and spend a little time with is just the process that many of us are entering into for perhaps the first time of communicating with people through a camera. Now, I'm not the best at this, but I'm also not the worst. The coronavirus in our area, in Springfield, Missouri, basically has things shut down. We're not even permitted groups of 10 where that we could bring a group of people together and video praise and worship. So we're just basically in isolation. Well, this is going to have thrown many pastors into a situation where that if they're going to speak to the people in their church, or if they're going to do any evangelistic work, it's going to have to be done via the internet. It will be done via Facebook Live or YouTube Live or on the church website. And for a lot of people, that's a different deal. And for many of us, video cameras have just become a norm when we preach or when we teach or we're at a conference or camp or something else. I think the majority of local churches these days have some form of camera that is running while the preaching or while a service is going on. But it usually happens while we are speaking to an audience. And the camera is simply on site capturing what you say to the audience. You're not talking to the camera. You're not using it to communicate with an audience. And the camera being there, recording what you say for some additional use or for historical purpose, for whatever reason. It being there for that purpose, and by contrast, it being your sole means of communication with your audience, those are two very different things. So there is no audience present to feed off of. There's no amen or that's right, preacher. There's not even any heads nodding in affirmation. The camera won't say amen. And if you ask, can I get a witness? The camera is not going to say a thing to you. So this is a different deal, something you may have never done. And for us at Calvary in Springfield, Pastor Butler and I, as we co-pastor this church and we reach for this community, all of the communication that we will be doing for 30 days is going to be done using a camera. Now, being accomplished or whatever you want to call it, speaking to a camera is not an overnight thing. I don't know that I am accomplished at it, but I'm relatively comfortable with it, primarily because I've done this now over 600 times through either HMD Live or Mission North America or Ministry Monday or some other setting where that maybe I was being interviewed or whatever. So I have a little experience with this. Let me give you some observations from that experience. So these may help you. If they don't, just throw them away. As you begin to think about what it's going to be like to communicate using a camera, I think it will help if you imagine this as though you are preparing to preach the funeral of someone who is marginally connected with your church. In most funerals, particularly those where that we don't have intimate association with the people whose funeral we're preaching, you don't count on, you don't anticipate much audience response. So I don't know, I may be the exception to the rule, but I prepare to preach funerals considerably different than I do for a Sunday morning. I get what I'm going to say down in detail. I generally don't work from some generalized outline, and I certainly don't go off the cuff. And this is going to be the case as you speak online. It's going to be important that you know what you're going to say and that you have it down in your mind. Okay, so you have to have it together in your thought process if you're going to communicate with them before you ever get there. The second thing that I would say to you, if this is kind of a new effort for you, is just upfront admit to your viewers that this is new. Appeal for their mercy and grace, and accept that you're going to have some times when you don't know what to do with your hands or where to look and all of that. You're in a learning curve, and a learning curve is always exactly that. It's steep on the front end. The more times that you speak, teach, or preach using a camera, the better you're going to get. So at the outset, don't worry too much about the small details. So how do you talk to people through a camera? Well, my personal approach with video work is kind of like what I'm doing just now, and that is to be as conversational as it possibly can be. And in this, you're working with three facets. Okay, here I am the presenter, I'm the speaker, I'm the trainer, whatever you would want to call it. Out there somewhere, and there are several viewers with me right now, I have no idea where you're at. You could be in Hong Kong, you could be in South Africa, or you could be across the street where that I'm currently visiting my parents. What I want to do is to have this conversational discussion with me, the speaker, the viewer, the listener, and the camera is between us. And so in order for it to work, I have to use the camera to assist in creating a mental dialogue. And one of the things you can do that kind of helps trick yourself into thinking about how you're going to get this done is just pretend that you're having a one-on-one conversation with a friend. And imagine what you're doing as this talk with a friend, just one-on-one. The camera is that friend. And it kind of helps create a comfort zone. Okay, so in a mental dialogue, you are answering questions that the viewer would be asking if they were in the room with you. And actually, that's kind of my strategy for most of my preaching and teaching. I don't want to tell people something that they're not particularly interested in, or that God is not giving them an answer for the issue at their moment. I want to speak relevant answers to questions and issues that people are dealing with today. And so conversational is very different than what I did, particularly as a younger preacher, when I would almost always get through preaching just soaking wet with sweat, and I had worn myself out. Listen, pounding the pulpit to emphasize your point when you're speaking online and storming and stomping about does not come off very good online. Okay, so you know you got to do this. It's going to happen. It's coming at you Sunday or whenever you're going to do your preparation. Where now? Practice speaking in front of the camera. Just try to get used to having the camera there, and you're not talking to somebody over there. You're not talking to somebody in the audience over that direction, but this is your audience. That's the only audience that you have, is that camera. And just getting under your belt the reality of talking with a camera. One of the benefits of this kind of stuff, though, is that if you choose to pre-record, you can do some editing. Now, I don't particularly like in ministry doing a whole lot of in-message editing. When I did Mission North America and HMD Live, we very rarely did anything except put a front end and a back on it. Instead, it was just, don't worry about a little bobble in your speaking, or a slight cough, or the mispronunciation of a word, let those things go, because that's a natural part of what you would be doing as a preacher, as a public speaker. I think all of us have probably wished for some times when we could redo a particular sermon. And I guess in this instance, if what we end up with is bad enough, that this is the chance that we might have to do a redo. Okay, so now I'm talking to the camera. I'm looking into it. Record yourself. Record yourself speaking what you intend to present. Okay, now comes the painful part. Watch yourself. Play it back and see how you look and sound, and I can almost assure you that it's going to be a painful experience. Remember the first time that you listened to audio of your preaching and you said, "My, I can't believe I sound that bad. Certainly that's not my voice." Well, when you look at yourself on camera, it's worse than that. Okay, so you've recorded yourself, you've looked at yourself, you realize that this is not going to be a perfect deal, and it never is. In the 11 minutes and 33 seconds that I've been with you, there have been several bobbles. So accept the fact that you're not putting together some Hollywood production. You are coming into this to communicate with people who are on the other side of the camera, somewhere else in your community or somewhere around the world. To be effective with this, plan what you're going to say. For this Ministry Monday, my communication, my presentation is drafted completely. It's a manuscript. I'm working from a manuscript. J.T. Pugh was a great preacher of another era, wrote out many of his sermons, and there are quite a number of significant preachers who do exactly that. If you're not comfortable writing it out word for word, then you definitely need to make an outline of your main ideas and plan the order of those ideas, because you need your speech. You need, and I'm not relegating sermons and preaching online to speech, but I want to be clear that you have to get it in order, because if you get it in order, it's going to make what you communicate clearer, and it's going to help with your nerves. What you're going to discover is that with the internet, with online video, and basically all facets of what you will do using the internet, content is king. You can get on and be emotional. There are, I'm sure, people who would be great examples, and their tears flow and all of that. But you can't do that every time. Emotion can come appropriately, but online ministry cannot ride on the coattails of emotion. With the internet, content is king. You better have something meaningful to say, and you have to be able to articulate that content in a sensible, systematic fashion. And in this setting, rabbit chasing is discouraged, because you will lose your viewing audience mentally if you chase many rabbits. As you speak online, use plain language. Even when you're using Bible words that I call it churchese: redeemed, reconciliation, holiness, righteousness, mercy, grace. For our audience, particularly for the lost audience that I'm reaching for in most of my teaching right now, I want to define those words. I want to redefine them. I want to communicate that principle in a way that they're able to comprehend. So drop the jargon that we use at church, or what we might use speaking at some grand event. In your speaking further, avoid inside jokes. And actually, this is good advice, even when you're speaking to a live audience. Because when you do an inside joke, the people who are not within the framework, who know what the joke is about, they get mentally left behind because you've gone on to talk about something else. But meanwhile, their mind is still engaged trying to figure out what they missed. Okay, so I think it's best in all communication to avoid inside jokes and certainly avoid them online. Don't mumble, speak clearly. Right now, I'm working in an imperfect situation. I've got microphones back at home that would capture what I'm saying much clearer, but I am in Louisiana helping with some illness situations with my parents. You have to work with what you got. Don't mumble, speak clear, speak slowly. And if you're nervous, force yourself to speak slowly, because generally that will bring your nerves under control. Nervous people tend to talk too fast. As you're talking online, choose to use short, clear sentences. Short sentences are the end thing in both writing and also speaking. I have 26 books in publication, and I look back at some of the earlier books where that had sentences that were quite a number of words and paragraphs that were quite extensive. That's no longer acceptable in written communication, nor is it acceptable really in spoken communication. Here's the thing. Sunday. Now, I know what I would like to have happen. I would like for the people that I pastor to get up at 8:45 or 8 or 7:30, whatever time it took, get a shower, brush their teeth, shave, comb their hair, put on their Sunday go to meeting clothes, whatever those are. And at 9:30, the family would gather in a room somewhere in the house, and they would enter into pre-service prayer. And then at 10 o'clock, they would be ready to have church. Well, that may be what I would like, and it may be what you would like, but there's going to be more people who watch your message in pajamas than in suits. And there's going to be quite a few of them that are eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So your ideas need to be clear and concise, because otherwise you lose their attention. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever else is going on, it gets their attention. Now, taking a step forward, make eye contact. The only way you're able to make eye contact is to look into the camera lens. If you don't look into the camera lens, you're not making eye contact with your audience. Now, I have my notes on iPad in front of me, and many of you, that's kind of what you're going to need to do, is have it somewhere there. And I can look down and capture some thoughts and then come back and look at the camera. It's okay to look aside. It's okay to, but don't pretend there's an audience over there if there isn't. Now, if there is one, well, maybe you can pull that off, even if it's just 2 or 3 people. But for the main part, look at the camera, okay? If you have the opportunity, choose a background. I don't have that leisure right now. I am working in my parents' office, and so it is what it is. But if you have the option, make sure you're standing in front of a background that is not distracting. And for some of you who are just trying to take normal Sunday church and kind of downsize it into Facebook church or online church, a big old empty platform is not a very good background. And you can effectively preach and teach from your office or from a corner with a nice layout or perhaps flowers or whatever else your decorators can pull together. And that's certainly not me. I depend on my wife for much of that kind of stuff. It's okay. Jesus did much of his communicating while he was sitting. So I don't have to be standing. As a matter of fact, when I do small group sessions, as we have started daughter churches in the past, we always sat in a circle with me sitting just in one of the chairs with them. Why? Because it allowed me to make direct eye contact with every person in the group on a constant basis. For most of us, as we get into this, just like I have tonight, the lighting is not going to be perfect. There are times you just don't have any options with that. Don't let any of that discourage you. Content is king. You can step into this. This past Monday, God awakened me in the night, and I've been doing a daily lesson online that is just basically a home Bible study. God awakened me in the night to talk about some very, very specific things having to do with demon possession. Okay? Now, God anointed that day. God directed my course. I don't know what all of the outcome is, but I know that from the outset of the 2 weeks that I've been teaching online, the presence of the Lord has been there. We have baptized people in Jesus' name. We have additional personal Bible studies that will be starting as soon as we can get in contact with other people. The anointing of God can come while you're sitting in an office, and God can use you in a powerful way. So recognize that your God's big enough to work with all of this kind of situation. While you're online, use body language. How you hold your body and how you hold your arms. It makes a difference. Stand or sit up straight. Hold your shoulders square. Lean into the camera, because that says, I'm glad to be here talking to you this way. If you're back on your heels, it's kind of like, I just got slapped and I wish I were doing something else in some other way. As you stand there, you sit, stay balanced. Don't shift around from one foot to the other, but use your hands to direct your viewer's attention, to capture, to convey emotion, and to emphasize some of the things that you want to say. Now, I want to take that a step further. Continuity of effort is important. If you're going to minister online, don't be hit or miss. For over 500 weeks, while I was leading a mission department, we had a weekly webcast every single week. That's a long time to not have any breaks. If you're going to preach and teach, do Sunday morning, do Sunday night. If you do Sunday nights, most of us are going to be downsizing one service for sure during this time. Do something on Wednesday or whatever your midweek is. Have something for young people, have something for children, and stay with it. In our church situation, I see this as the greatest evangelistic opportunity there has been in my entire life. And that's the reason that every morning at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time, I'm doing a daily Bible study. I just finished teaching about salvation. Previously, I taught about the Word of God. It's really drawn from my home Bible study series, What the Bible Says. But I'm putting much more effort, much more extensively into what I'm communicating. Okay? That's working for me. It may not be the thing for you, but we will do that. And I may have learned from this that since teaching is kind of my strong suit, that I need to be doing this on an ongoing basis. So whether it's that or your Sunday service or youth or children or testimonies or whatever, stay with it. Be constant, be consistent. Whenever you're doing this kind of work, keep your laugh handy. When you mess up, and you will when you're live. And when you do, instead of getting flustered, slow down and laugh at yourself and let the audience recognize that you're secure enough to recognize that you're not trying to be the local news reporter or whatever. So to my audience, you can do this, but it's not business as usual. You can't take what you're going to do in ministry Sunday. You can't take what your normal Sunday is and just kind of put it into a K-cup, as it were, and just kind of give a little mini church with all the trimmings and it work. Now, a couple of suggestions. If you are taking segments, which is what we will probably be doing this weekend because we had problems with lag and some other things, but if you're taking segments from different places, which is, okay, I'll be speaking from my home. Pastor Butler will be speaking from his home. We'll have people singing. We'll have testimonies from various other places. So we have to weave those together. They're going to have different backgrounds. Nothing we can do about it. Most of us are not tech people. I'm not. I can't do that. But you can look to something that is known as Fiverr, Fiverr.com. or to freelancer.com. And there are worldwide options as far as people who can help you with video editing, and it is amazingly inexpensive. If this is your first weekend to minister online to your local church and to lost people, it may not be the best effort that you ever put together, but stay with it. Now, I want to ask you to do one thing for me, and that is this. And it's not just going to help me, it's going to help others. Other than speaking to a camera, which has very limited scope in some ways. Now, video is the most powerful form of communication online, but you can also wear out the welcome of it. What other creative ways are you using to equip and edify, also evangelize during this difficult time and challenging time for the entire world? I need your ideas. Other people need your ideas. If you're doing anything that even has a semblance of working, and it may be so new that you just think it's going to work. If any of that is in your portfolio, please share it with us. You can help us all. Thank you for being part of Ministry Monday. It'll also be on YouTube. I look forward to being with you Monday with 4 or 5 minutes instead of 27 and a half minutes. God bless you. Have great church this weekend. I want to hear reports of revival.